He was once Caesar's friend, his ally, his student, almost a son. And then, he became the man who stabbed him. History remembers Brutus as the betrayer. But behind the dagger was something more complicated. A man torn between love and duty, between loyalty to a friend and to a dying republic. Welcome to the Hidden Thread. This is the story of Marcus Junius Brutus, the last man who believed Rome could be saved, and the price he paid for trying. He wasn't born a traitor. He was born a Roman. Marcus Junius Brutus came from a lineage of resistance. His ancestors had helped overthrow the Roman kings. In his blood ran the stubborn pride of men who chose death over tyranny. His father had died fighting Pompey. His mother, she was the lover of Julius Caesar. So from the start, Brutus lived between two worlds, legacy and loyalty. What do you do when the man who loves you is also the man undoing everything you believe in? Brutus didn't chase power. He chased virtue. He studied philosophy, quoted Plato, wrote essays on duty and justice. In a time of corruption and ambition, Brutus believed that reason still mattered, that the republic could be saved with ideas. But ideas are fragile in a world ruled by ambition. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon and claimed near absolute power, Brutus stayed silent at first. After all, Caesar had forgiven him, given him command, trusted him, treated him like a son, and Brutus wanted to believe that Caesar's dictatorship was only temporary, that it was for Rome's sake. But the Senate grew weaker, the people more passive, and Caesar, once a general, now sat like a king, crowned with honors, surrounded by flatterers, dictator for life. And that was the line Brutus could not cross, because if Caesar ruled like a king, then the republic was already dead. While others saw opportunity in Caesar's rise, Brutus saw an obligation. He didn't want to strike the blow, but he knew someone had to. And if no one else would save the republic, then it would have to be him. They didn't choose Brutus for his sword. They chose him for his name. The conspirators needed legitimacy. They had senators, soldiers, even former allies of Pompey. But what they didn't have was a symbol, a conscience, a man the people respected. Brutus was that man. He was the republic made flesh. At first he hesitated. He debated. He wept. He begged them to find another way. But as Caesar's power grew, so did the pressure. Letters appeared on his chair in the Senate, whispering of duty. Old friends pressed him. If you won't stop him, who will? It wasn't ambition that led Brutus to the Senate that day. It was heartbreak. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, they struck. As Caesar took his seat in the Senate, he was surrounded, first by Tullius Cimber, who begged for the pardon of his brother. When Caesar waved him off, Cimber grabbed his toga. That was the signal. Casca struck first, grazing Caesar's neck. Then the rest followed. Even now, Brutus hung back. Caesar turned to him, bleeding, confused. And when Brutus stepped forward, blade in hand, Caesar said nothing. But the look in his eyes said everything. He didn't cry out. He didn't beg. He just saw Brutus and stopped fighting. Some say he whispered, "Et tu, Brute?" Others say he pulled his toga over his face. Either way, the meaning was clear. If even Brutus was here, then it was over. As Caesar collapsed beneath Pompey's statue, The conspirators stood in silence, blood on their hands. The Republic restored. But Brutus wasn't cheering. He looked not like a liberator, but like a man who had just killed his own future. He had saved the idea of Rome by destroying the man who had once saved him. Rome did not cheer. When Brutus stepped out into the Forum after the assassination, there was no applause, no grateful citizens, only fear. The liberators had freed the Republic. But the Republic had moved on. Within days, the city spiraled. Caesar's funeral lit the fuse. And when Mark Antony held up the bloodied toga, the people didn't cry for justice. They cried for vengeance. Brutus fled. He and Cassius gathered legions in the east, what was left of the old Republican cause. They minted coins stamped with daggers and the cap of liberty. They wrote letters to the Senate, insisting they had saved Rome. And Brutus? Brutus still quoted Plato before battle. He wasn't a soldier by nature. He was a philosopher wearing armor. But war doesn't care about ideals. As Antony and Octavian rose to power, Brutus marched through Greece, pushing back governors and raising funds. He tried to rule honorably, paid his men, avoided plunder, even let some cities go free. But every choice he made slowed him down. Cassius urged pragmatism. Brutus urged principle. And slowly, the noose tightened. The Republic wasn't rising. It was bleeding out. Still, Brutus believed. In his tent at night, he wrote essays on virtue and justice. He told his men this wasn't civil war. It was a rescue mission. That Rome could still be healed. He didn't see himself as a rebel. He saw himself as Rome's last honest man. But the Republic had become a memory. And memories don't win wars. By the autumn of 42 BCE, the last army of the Republic stood at Philippi. 2 leaders, 2 legions, 2 dreams of Rome. On one side, Brutus and Cassius, idealists, exiles, veterans. On the other, Mark Antony, Lepidus and Octavian, ambitious, ruthless, rising. The first battle came fast. Cassius misread the chaos and, believing Brutus had lost, took his own life. The Republic's fiercest general fell not to the sword, but to despair. Brutus wept, then picked up the pieces, and for 3 more weeks he held the line. He gave speeches, paid his troops, marched through mud and smoke. But when the second battle came, there was no philosophy left, only fate. Brutus's flank broke, the enemy surged in, and just like that, the last hope of the old Rome was shattered. He fled into the hills with a handful of loyal men. But he knew it was over. That night, under a moonlit sky, Brutus sat quietly with his officers. He thanked them. He embraced them. And then he stepped away into the darkness. There was no grand speech, no final rally, only a simple request. Hold his sword steady. And with that, Rome's last idealist fell on his own blade. He died not cursing his enemies, but regretting he had lived to see the Republic fall. He had given everything, his honor, his name, his soul, and still it wasn't enough. Brutus was gone, and in his place only empire remained. When Brutus fell on his sword, Rome did not weep. The Republic he died for was already gone, swallowed by ambition, war, and silence. But Brutus didn't vanish. He became a ghost. Mark Antony called him a man of honor. Octavian, Rome's new master, made sure his name was never praised in public again. And yet, the world kept whispering. In Dante's Inferno, Brutus is condemned to the lowest circle of hell, alongside Judas. But in the minds of revolutionaries, rebels, and republicans, he became something else entirely. A man who killed his friend, not for power, but for principle. In the centuries that followed, Brutus became a mirror. To tyrants, he was treachery. To republicans, he was courage. During the Enlightenment, his name returned like a spark. In the American Revolution, his face appeared on coins. In France, his story was staged to inspire liberty and to warn what it might cost. Because Brutus failed. And that failure mattered, not because he was weak, but because his world didn't want what he was offering. He stood for a republic already dying, and in trying to save it, he became its final chapter. Brutus did not survive in marble or monuments. He survived in questions. What is loyalty? What is freedom worth? And when do ideals become more powerful than life itself? Brutus did not live to see Rome restored. He lived just long enough to realize it never would be. He killed not out of hatred, but out of hope. And hope, in the end, was not enough. But maybe that's why his story still haunts us, because it asks a question we've never stopped asking. What do you do when the world betrays what you believe in? Thank you for joining us on this chapter of The Hidden Thread. In the next episode, we'll take a closer look at Octavian, the boy Caesar named as heir, who outplayed every rival, buried a republic, and built an empire in his own image. Subscribe for more stories where history isn't just told, it's revealed.